Okay, we are live here on the Edlow Podcast. Subscribe, 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 as I always say. And I have a special guest today. I have Robert Schafer, aka Joe
But
Vickers, aka Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
I was getting ready to jump in and do it, but you
Yeah,
beat me to it.
I should have let you. That would have been awesome. I'm
Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
That's right, man. So I'm really grateful that you took the time to come in and speak with me because I'm a big fan of your work. The Office is something, it's interesting. I don't know of any other show that people watch to like fall asleep to. You know what I mean? Like they'll just leave it on. It's like a comfort food, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah. What is it about The Office that you think that is? I mean, it's so restreamable, you know?
The jokes are still funny, even though you know they're coming. You've seen them. I mean, for me, Seinfeld's much the same way. I
Yeah.
mean, you know the joke, you've heard it a million times, but it's still funny.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we live with the show, and there's a lot of a lot of soap opera in that series as well. I used to say that back in the beginning. I mean, people were crazy about Jim and Pam.
Mm.
Jam,
Yeah. Yeah.
obsessed with Jam. When are they going to get together? Uh, you
Yeah.
know, so we rode that for a while, but there's a lot of bittersweet human moments in it. And it's very relatable to this day, of course.
Yeah. It is. And it's interesting because Jim and Pam, they had their love story, but at the same time, also Bob and Phyllis had theirs. And it kind of intertwined. Like we had the Valentine's Day episode where you guys all went out to dinner and then you disappeared to the bathroom together.
Well, we were having a dessert before dinner.
Yeah,
Know what I mean?
I
Uh,
do.
that's a funny story because when we shot that scene, when I first read it, I was like, "Oh man, I would never do that. Bob would never do this." But then I was like, "I know it's funny."
Yeah.
So we were having a great time doing it, and then the end of it, we go into the bathroom, and Phyllis and I are in there with the sound guy, and they say, "Okay, make noise," and you know we make all this grunting and groaning, and we're trying not to laugh, Phyllis and I, and they make it goes on for like a full minute, you know. And I said to her between takes, I said, "You realize they're only going to use maybe 2 seconds of this, that they're just out there laughing at us, they're listening, they're having to go on and on because they're having fun with us." So, that was a very funny moment.
Oh man. Well, one of the things that I think also resonates with The Office is it seemed as though all of the actors really were friends and really enjoyed each other. There was a camaraderie there. When you hear people talk about The Office, everybody seems to have had fond memories of being there. And was that your experience as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, the way that it was shot demanded it, right? It wasn't like a normal film or TV show where people shoot their scene, they go sit in their trailer for a while, and then they come back and work again later. When you're in there, you're in there, right?
Mhm.
So, because the camera sees 360 at all times, so once you're in the scene, you're in the scene. So, it used to drive people crazy because they would want to leave, and they would be stuck in what we call deep background,
Mm.
which there was no extra coming to sit in your spot. You were sitting there no matter what, even though you were just barely in it. But that's you know, I think the camaraderie had to do with the fact that it was an underdog show to begin with, and there were no stars on the show. Everybody was a character actor for the most part, and very solid performers. Though I mean, the talent ran very deep on that show. I
Yeah.
mean, Oscar, for instance, an amazing actor. Watch him in The Proposal, the film he did with Sandra Bullock.
Mhm.
He pretty much steals that movie.
Yeah.
He plays the waiter in it. I mean,
Yeah.
every time he's on scene, he just owns the movie. Uh, but talent to burn, and Kevin and Brian Baumgartner, of course. I mean, everybody, and Phyllis, of course, was the casting director on the show,
Mm. I didn't
and
know that.
oh yeah, they put her in, and
Mm.
that was a huge life changer. In fact, I had read for her maybe 3 or 4 years before that, where she was the casting director, and I went in. I was reading for a part in a show about Elvis, and I remember it because I was friends with the executive producer, and I felt like I've got this part locked up, and then I just was terrible. I mean, I stunk the joint up. I mean, I was embarrassed really, and so I was glad she didn't remember that. Because when I went up, when I was up for the office, um, I waited a couple weeks on the callback, and when I went in, there was a bunch of guys there, of course, and I feel like she made the decision, but
Mm.
I think the director and the producer obviously would take credit or blame,
Well,
depending on who you ask.
and this is what's interesting. So I think I told you off. I did tell you off air that I've taken some acting classes myself in college and stuff like that as part of just
Right.
I had some extra credits to burn. And one of the things that I found really interesting is when you have a character that you're going to play, they always wanted you to kind of fill in your own backstory. And there were some things we know about Bob Vance. He had military background, owned Vance Refrigeration. Uh, I always felt he kind of had a little bit also of like almost like a mob boss in him a little bit. Maybe it was just that episode where they had all the guys come together because there was a parking lot issue. It felt like it was like the mafia coming together. I don't know, but
Well, that's a direct mafia reference. The five families,
right.
the five families in New York. That's we were doing the five families of Scranton. Uh, I've heard that a lot. I mean, I never really incorporated that. I always saw Bob Moore as a straight shooter.
Mhm.
They were making him more wicked.
Yeah.
That's what the writers do. For instance, I never drank at any of the parties, right?
Mm.
And so then Phyllis has a talking head where she says we were on safari in Africa. I was drunk. We ran over. It may have been a child or an animal. We're not really sure. Or soccer ball, something. So now I'm guilty of hit and run. Then there's a grand jury where uh, I guess I ducked out on it or threatened witnesses. Then there's a rumor of an affair with the secretary. Then I'm banging her in a disabled bathroom, on Valentine's Day. How romantic. So they were, I had to play all that, and I didn't mind. Uh, but there was a line also where Phyllis goes, "We like to go out to bars," and Bob, I wear something low cut, and guys look at my cleavage, and then Bob beats them up.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, that's weird. That is weird. I mean, okay, I can do it.
Well, did you create any sort of backstory for the character yourself to help you inform, kind of fill him out?
Well, I mean, he's a salesman, right?
Mhm.
First and foremost. So
Yeah.
that's the guy.
Mm.
That's the whole why the Bob Vance Refrigeration. He's saying it for the cameras
Right.
every
Right.
time. It's free
Right.
advertising every time.
Yeah.
He's doing a commercial. He does his own commercials. He's one of those guys. I
Right.
mean, in my mind, he did his own commercials, right?
Uh-huh.
He, in my mind, he's the champion golfer at the country club. He wins the poker game every week at the country club.
Mm.
He throws money around like crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, he pays $1,000 to hug his own wife.
Right.
I mean, that's fuck you, Michael money right
Yeah.
there is what that is.
Yeah.
So that's beating somebody with the big boy wallet.
Yeah.
So I had all that going, and then really the key thing was when they said I was in Vietnam. I was
Mm.
a Marine Corps combat infantry officer, and I know those guys. I mean,
Mhm.
that's you're a combat infantry officer, Marine Corps combat infantry officer from Vietnam. You're a serious boy,
Yeah. And
right?
that doesn't go away. Yeah.
No, ever, not for a second, ever. So that guy has a lot of situational awareness, which no one else in the office seemingly had,
Right.
right?
Right.
And how would Michael ever scare that guy?
Right. Right.
He was
Even though he was
he
trying.
he was leading men in the jungle,
Right.
trying to keep them alive. I mean, that's a serious guy.
Yeah.
So, uh, and I'm 6'5",
Yeah.
two
Well,
thirty.
that was one thing
So
I wanted to ask you about. It kind of a little off topic was that because I'm tall too. I'm 6'7". You can't see it here, so
okay.
I can sympathize with your plight. And then it's nice to be tall, but I know in acting, I mean, is it harder for you to get roles because you're large, or you kind of like you're fit into roles because you're a bigger guy?
Well, it works both ways, obviously,
Uh-huh.
but the fact of the matter is that the 6'5", 6'4" guy is not going to be the little leading man's best friend. Okay,
Mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm.
They're not. They don't want to look up to people. They want to look down.
Right,
you know,
right.
a funny story I'll tell you about that is, the TV series they have now. It's called Reacher.
Mm,
And Reacher is a series of novels, great novels. I love them. It's a military policeman who wanders the country. He's 6'5", 250 pounds, right? And
mhm.
and everywhere he goes, he kicks ass
Right.
because he lives by this code. He's got this code. Uh, and there's plenty of bad guys wherever he goes. There's bad guys. So very famous series. Lee Childs is the author. There's like 30 books in the series,
Mhm,
right? So
mhm,
I'm out playing golf one day in Studio City, and I'm playing golf with one of the people from Tom Cruise's company,
mm.
um, production company. And she says, "Well, Tom is in Pittsburgh right now shooting Reacher." And I didn't know about this. I'm like, "Reacher? Jack Reacher?
Yeah, yeah,
Jack Reacher?" She goes, "Oh yeah, are you familiar with Jack Reacher?" And I'm like, "I love Jack Reacher.
yeah,
I want to be Jack Reacher. I am Jack Reacher. What do you mean it's Tom Cruise? Because Tom's a little guy.
yeah,
He's
right.
not a big man." So, cut to he did a great job in the movie. He
Mhm,
played the part, played the role twice, right? Um, but the first, if you watch it, the way they shoot him, and they hire people smaller than him, and they're always angling up at him, and they've always got a Dutch angle on him, and they got him padded out. I mean, they make him look big, as big as
mhm.
they can. But
Sure.
I remember just the shock of thinking, "Holy crap,
Yeah, yeah, right.
holy crap!" All this time you were thinking, "Man, maybe someday I'll get a shot at playing Reacher."
Yeah, and then they give it to Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. So
Well, Tom Cruise, they didn't give it to him. Tom Cruise said, "This is what I want to do."
yeah, right, right. He's
That's
got
how
the
that goes. I mean,
yeah,
whatever Tom wants, Tom gets.
yeah, I'm sure. Now, talking about, just acting in general, I'm sure we'll talk more about The Office, but, um, you know, you sounds like you were classically trained from what I've learned about you, and you actually went to acting school, but what was it that kinda got you into wanting to uh, pursue a career in acting at all?
An actress.
Okay. Isn't that always the story?
Well, not always, but in my case it was, and I was fortunate enough to fall in love with a beautiful, famous actress named Susan Day,
Ah,
uh, who was a big TV star from the Partridge Family and later L.A. Law. And so we lived together about 5 years. And so um, I went to all her movie sets, and that's where, with her encouragement, she said, "You can do this." So I went to the best teacher in LA, and I, had all these great classmates, and I studied all the playwrights and learned my craft, and then went out and auditioned for the rest of my life.
yeah. Now, what you mentioned you learned the craft. What do you think the biggest takeaway, the one thing that you think makes an actor successful as far as being? Well, let me back up and say, you know, in my view, watching, I'm a movie buff, and there
Right.
are the actors, that if they're in the movie, you're excited they're in the movie because you're going to see something, feel something, and then you got the movies, where like the action heroes and the people who you're not going to get, you're not going to get an Oscar level performance. You're just going to be entertained, right?
Right.
And
Sure.
so you strike me as someone who's a character actor who loves the craft. What is it that is something that you would say is a big takeaway for someone who really wants to be a good actor?
Well, I think you have to I think you have to learn a technique. It's like playing golf. I became a golfer, so you have to be able to repeat your swing
Mhm, mhm,
under pressure, which
mhm,
you got to be able to get the take under pressure, right? And
mhm,
so that means that you do all your homework, you've got the character, I mean, as time goes on, you act less and less, and because it's all done beforehand before you get there. I mean, the
mhm,
preparation is there. You
mhm,
you know the character. I mean, here's a fun little story. Nick Nolte, who I love as an actor, great actor, right?
mhm,
I mean, 40 years of great acting by Nick Nolte. What
mhm.
does he do when he gets a part? Well, the first thing he does is he finds the shoes.
Hmm.
What shoes is this character going to wear?
Really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it is. I mean, so, I mean, that kind of goes, when you're auditioning for the part, you're trying to sort of dress like the character, and you're trying to get as close to it as you can without really giving them the full show. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, there's a whole technique to auditioning, which is different than playing the role, right?
sure,
I mean, playing the role is like, getting to eat the birthday cake. I mean,
sure. Uh-huh,
uh,
uh-huh.
that's the good part. It's the getting it is the tough part.
Mhm. So for actors, like you, I mean, you have a whole career. I mean, you've been doing it for 30, 40 years. What was and I'm sure it's changed over time, but the
Oh
amount
man,
of
made big time.
amount of auditions you go on versus the amount of roles you get. I mean, how many auditions to roles would it be?
Well, that depends. A funny story. I mean, there was one day where I had 6 auditions in one day.
Oh, wow.
6. And so, I mean, it was the craziest day ever because at the time I was driving a 1969 Cadillac, which is, an 18 and a half foot long car, big engine, just racing through LA. And I was going from one spot, I was in the valley, then I was in the Marina Del Rey, and then I was downtown, and then I was somewhere else, all day long. And every time I would get to the next one, I would just change shirts. But I didn't get one single one of those jobs. Not
Wow.
one, not one. And 4 of them were callbacks.
Huh.
So, I was convinced, oh, something's happening today. But a funny story happened was I was reading for the movie Troy, the the Brad Pitt movie. And that was a big deal for me to be in that casting director's office. I never been in that office before, so I was excited to be in there. And it's just me and another girl sitting in the waiting room. Casting director comes in carrying a bunch of hot coffee, cappuccinos, and she looks at us and she goes, "Is either one of you driving a black BMW?" The girl goes, "I am." And she goes, "Well, why are you parked in the spot that says casting directors only?" I'm turning and I look at this girl like, what in the world have you just done to us? Because now she's mad. This casting director is furious that this girl, parked in her spot and she had to carry the coffees. I mean, and so she ruined the deal for me. And that happens all the time. Like you'll get a partner in commercial auditions a lot where, you get paired up with people and you're like, oh no, not this kid.
Yeah.
But that's the luck of the draw.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? Like, you're obviously classically trained. You've put in your time with the craft. And I mean, what do you do if you get a bad draw of someone you're working with? How do you manage that?
Well, you just have to take care of your own business and you can't worry about them. And obviously you can't carry them and you can't train them and you can't, change them. So just survive them.
Yeah, I guess so, man.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
Man. Now, is there I wanted to say too, you have something that's kind of unique, I think, in that you have a very notable character that you portrayed in one of the biggest TV shows of all time, but you're also a star of a cult classic horror film. So you've done both. I don't know if there's anybody else who has done both of those things. Can you think of anybody that's been in both of those things?
Oh, well, it's rare. I mean, you could go back, Vincent Price.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, if we're going back, sure.
Vincent Price, who, basically was who I was kind of trying to steal from or emulate. I mean, that would be, the guy I worked with that had a big influence on me in my very first movie. I worked with Christopher Lee, who was Dracula. And I mean, Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
And just a phenomenal presence, 6'5", 6'4", English gentleman. That's Sir Christopher Lee, by the way, I think. And so, being around that kind of level of greatness, and, those type of villains, they relished their insanity or their evil or their crimes or their depravity. So that's all I was doing. I was just like, love it. Love your evil. Love what you are doing. That's and so Psycho, that's that's a little trickier than people would think. I mean, what I really had to do is figure out how to be able to turn it on and off. Click a switch.
Yeah, because if you were Stanislavski trained, which is kind of method acting, right?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, oh no, I was into it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so it's one thing to method act as Bob Vance. It's another to be Officer Joe Vickers, psycho cop, right? That's
but that was when I was in my purest phase. I was a knight on a white charger. I mean, I was acting. I was an actor, and I mean, I didn't hang out with I called them the victims. I mean, they were my co-stars in the movie, but I didn't hang out with them because I was going to kill them.
Right.
I didn't want to be their friend. I mean, I was nice to them. I was courteous to everybody. I've always been courteous, but I didn't want to hang out with them. I mean, I would eat lunch with them, but mostly I stuck to myself and then just, came out for the killing.
It's just, do you ever think to yourself, you're like, when you say things like that, like I just stuck to the killing, do you ever go, man, how cool is it that I'm an actor? I mean, do you kind of pinch yourself sometimes?
Well, here's the thing, Josh. I haven't been doing it for the last 3.5 years. I retired. I left
Mm,
LA. I'm
okay.
living in West Virginia now. Uh, so I'm not in that world anymore. I mean, occasionally I interact, I get to do a podcast or an interview or, I still make cameos
Mhm.
almost every day as Bob Vance, believe it or not.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I still play that role every day. But as far as Joe Vickers and Psycho Cop, yeah, I mean, the great thing is a couple of years ago, right before I left LA, we had a screening of Psycho Cop Returns at this new screening room in LA. The place was packed. Um, all these people were there, and the director was there, Adam Rifkin, and so the movie was the first time we'd ever watched it in a full theater with you know a restored version of
Mhm.
the director's cut of the movie, the way it was supposed to be seen, with all the violence and all the gore. And the most satisfying thing was all the jokes worked, all the gore worked, all the shock, all the scares worked. We by the end of it, we owned that audience, a modern audience, and we're talking
Mhm.
about a film we made in 1993, or was released in '93. We made it in '92 because
Mhm.
we were in the film. We referenced the Rodney King riots. I mean,
Right.
Joe Vickers, police officer Vickers, is beaten by the crowd. We flipped the scene
Mhm.
as opposed to the Rodney King.
Mm. Wow. So now, now that your career is over, well, let me ask, what caused you to finally hang it up?
Oh, it was just time to get out of LA. I was tired of it. I mean, 40 years in LA is that almost sounds biblical, really.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't survive, and that's another thing I wanted to ask you, as somebody who's made it for 40 years, right? I mean, made it probably in differing degrees, but
Of
you had a
course,
40-year career. What do you think you had that was different than all the people who don't make it?
stubbornness, refusal to quit. Just insane amount of belief in myself. I mean, I never ever lacked confidence ever,
Mhm,
even in the rough times, when you're not working or you're not making money or you're not getting the parts. You still have the confidence. I mean, you still
mhm,
you still stay in the fight because you're gonna be up and you're gonna be down. I mean, it's gonna be wins and losses. I mean, it's a career. I mean, it's
mhm.
people always think of it in the short term or they see the victories, right? But there's plenty of defeats.
Right.
You're
Well,
getting your butt kicked, on a daily basis.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing that I think is so interesting. I'm trying to, I've got kids, I have 4 of them, and I try to talk to them, about that. And I think that the biggest thing that is a barrier to success is a fear of failure. I've never really understood that. I've never understood people who are so afraid to fail that they don't even try. And it sounds like what you're saying is that you just weren't afraid of that. You just thought you were going to be successful.
Well, but I also had to learn, you know, to make a total commitment.
Mhm,
Early on in the game, I was relying on my looks and my natural gifts, and I didn't have to study the script. I didn't have to work hard on it. I could just roll in and do it. But
mhm,
as time went on, I realized, wait, this is opportunity. I need to treat this like it's, my last best opportunity. So
mhm.
when I went in to audition for The Office, um, I was prepared.
Right.
you
Right.
know, like ultra prepared,
Right.
and as a matter of fact, I took an audition technique class that
Mhm,
changed everything for me because I hadn't been auditioning correctly. And then
mm,
I learned this technique on how to audition correctly, and I booked in a matter of 3 weeks. I booked 3 shows. I did Boston Legal,
mm.
guest star in Las Vegas, Great set, by the way. And a little TV series called The Office.
Mm-hmm.
And the irony is, I was offered to an opportunity to be the Maytag repairman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and my agents wanted me to do that. They were like, "Bobby, you should take this." And I'm like, "Oh, hell no."
not gonna do that.
Well, no, because they were offering $100,000, but that was for a year of traveling the country, doing 250 in-person in-person uh, shows, or greet and meets in malls and whatnot. And I was like, 250.
Yeah, that's a long time. That's like
Come on.
pro
Yeah.
wrestling dates. Yeah.
At the end of week one, somebody's dying.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to read an article. Psycho cop kills somebody in mall in Scranton.
Oh man, that's hilarious. So, going back to The Office, I had to ask you, of all the characters, other than of course Bob Vance and Phyllis, who is your favorite character to watch?
Oh, Michael Scott,
Oh yeah,
of course, by
yeah,
far. The rest of them were all great. I mean, I can't really say, oh, I really. I mean, uh, Todd Packer always made me laugh because
yeah.
he was in another show. I mean,
Mhm,
I was familiar with David, his work, but then when I walked in, I did Christmas episode, the Christmas party, my first episode. He was in there, and I was like watching him. I'm like, this guy's in another show. He's doing his own damn show. Everybody else is doing The Office, but Todd Packer is doing Todd Packer's show.
yeah, yeah. Man, watching Steve Carell do Michael Scott when you were there.
Yeah.
I mean, talk to me about what that was like, because it seemed to me he's obviously very good with the ad libbing. He's very good with being off the cuff. I mean, when you watched it, was it impressive to you as another actor to see someone do that?
Well, there was very little ad libbing, first of all. I mean, everything is scripted. It's network approved. They approve every word.
Mm,
Okay. So, very little ad libbing. Every now and then they would do it to make each other laugh. It was typically
mhm,
John and Rain and Steve. But
mhm,
Steve, I mean, when you're the lead dog, you're he's always busy preparing the next scene, right?
mm, mhm,
He's got his pages out. He's always working on the next scene, no matter
mm,
what, because he's going to carry it. He's the funny guy. He's got to be funny, and that's an incredible amount of pressure to be
mhm.
funny. I don't think people realize.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and it never gets easier. And so, a great comic is always searching for the laugh. You're not sure where it's going to land. I mean, uh, there's a lot of it in the writing, but that show was very nuanced, and you could get a lot said in the performance. I mean, look at all that Bob was able to do with nothing,
Right. Right.
right? I mean, so just by the way, you carry yourself through a scene, you're saying something. So um, it, at the end of the day, TV is a writer's medium, but it still belongs to the actor. As
Mhm,
much as they want it to be about the director and the producer and the writer, it's still the actor that owns it at the end of the. But I mean, they can always kill you.
yeah. Right. Right.
You know,
Well, did you that's something I wanted to ask. How much input did you have in anything that Bob Vance did?
Zero.
They're just like, do this, and you said, okay.
I, when I saw the script, whatever little bit was in there for me to do, or they told me stand there, do this, do that. I mean, that's what I did.
Nice. Yeah. Do you if you look on YouTube, there seems to be a bunch of like outtakes of things that people did to make each other laugh on The
Uh-huh.
Office. Do you remember ever being there and seeing something that just made you laugh, like a funny story of something someone did to just crack the cast up or anything like that?
Well, I mean, when we were shooting Phyllis's wedding, there is a deleted scene where either Michael or Phyllis farts, and they blame it on each other. And they open the door, and I'm standing there, and I'm looking at the bride, and I'm mad at Michael for opening the door, and then I smell the fart, So, but the funny thing about that scene is that when we were filming it, every time Michael said he had a line where he would say to Phyllis, "Oh, it's it's just so pungent."
Yeah.
Every time he said pungent, he fell apart. He couldn't say it. This went on for like a half an hour. And I'm standing outside the door waiting for him to open the door. And I'm thinking, okay, here he comes. But I would hear him break down laughing. And down below me, a floor down below, I could hear all the writers and producers, the whole staff is watching the monitor, and they're laughing at him, laughing. So I had it from both ends. And I was just standing there going, whatever you do not blow this take.
So, you have how many SAG credits do you have? Over 100?
Over 100, sure.
Yeah. So, is there a role? Well, I got two questions. One, is there a role that you would have considered like a dream role that you never got to do? And then also, what would you say, like, of all the auditions you did that you didn't get, what was the biggest one?
Well, there's a bunch of those. The biggest one I didn't get was Moonlighting.
Oh, I
That
remember Moonlighting.
Bruce Willis got that, and everybody was trying for that one. And I went to 2 callbacks on that, and I was feeling cocky because I'd had a little experience with Sybil Shepherd, and I was thinking, oh, this is fate, and it's going to happen, but it didn't. So that was the one that got away. When I did Psycho Cop, when I signed a 5-picture deal, and I was offered a role in Back to the Future.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
yeah, and the casting director could not believe when I turned it down. She was freaking out. She was like, "You have got to be kidding me! You're turning down a part in a Robert Zemeckis Steven Spielberg production for what? What's the name of the movie?
For Psycho
Psycho
Cop.
Cop. You have got to be out of your fucking mind." Of course,
What role did they want you to play?
it's something to do with Biff, and uh, so I mean, to me, I had a 5-picture deal. I was gambling on me. I thought I was going to be the next Freddy Krueger, right?
Sure,
I
sure.
I signed a $1.2 million deal, so I
Right.
thought, I've done it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was funny. I lived next door to this great actor named Steve James. He was a black action star. He was in all the American Ninja movies, and we had been in Hollywood Shuffle together. And I remember coming home after signing that contract. We lived right next door to each other, and he was sitting down on the stoop, and I said, "It's done. It's done. I've signed a $1.2 million deal." Didn't work
What?
out. Didn't
Yeah.
quite work out that way.
So so what happened? So I know there's been two. Why
Right.
didn't was there with the five
Well,
with the five
the
picture deal?
producer the producer of the picture, Cassian Elways, he became he quit producing and he became an agent of William Morris.
Mm,
Now he's back to producing. He's actually producing a movie with one of my Psycho Cop Returns co-stars, Nick Vallelonga, the Oscar winner from Green Book. They're making a film with John Travolta right now called That's Amore.
hmm.
But
Interesting.
he left the business. He was an agent for about 20 years, so he owned the rights and he quit making them.
Mm,
Um, and I wrote the third one. I have a script for the third one, but I mean, would be great if we could do it, but I would have to make money.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
not going to do it for free. You know,
Right.
those days are over. I don't do it for love anymore.
Right. Right.
Right.
Well, well, so by the way, another things. The SAG strike ended finally, or they've
Hmm.
got a deal in principle. How do you feel about that? I mean, I know you've been away from it for a few years, but how did you feel about
Well, I was glad to see it end. I mean, I was afraid they were going to break the union. I get a pension from that union. I don't want to see anything happen to that.
it? Right,
So
right.
I had very selfish reasons. And, you know, anytime they increase residuals, I'm all for it. I mean, I'm not really part of the streaming thing. I mean,
Mhm.
the office streams, obviously. And,
Right,
you know, I mean, that still plays like crazy. So who knew?
right. Man.
Nobody knows. I mean, The Office is singular in the sense that it got way bigger after it was off the air.
Yeah, yeah.
Usually, when it's on the air, it's big, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. We got bigger and bigger and bigger.
You know, what's so interesting about that, because I when The Office came out, I was excited because I had some experience with the British Office.
Right.
And one of the things that I thought was so interesting about the American version was because if you watch the first few episodes, it doesn't really hit, right? It's not quite there. But as the first season goes on, when you get to the episodes that are the medical plan and then the alliance, those episodes that they start hitting their stride. Jim and Pam, that connection starts happening. The work between Jim and Dwight starts really kind of mixing, and then it's the next season where Michael Scott kind of becomes a little bit more personable, and you get a little bit more, and then suddenly all the characters really start kind of finding their stride, and you become a part of that. When was it that you guys kind of realized you had something a little bit bigger?
Well, when I became part of it.
Yeah, yeah. As soon as Robert Schafer was on, then we knew.
No, that was just coincidence. But my first week on the show, we got picked up for the rest of the year.
Mhm.
Well, that takes all kind of pressure off, right? If you
Right,
know that you're going to make 14 more episodes, everybody's happy. Well, by
right.
then, the cast was interacting on MySpace with fandom, and we began to sell episodes on iTunes, which
Mm,
convinced them that they had a hit, right?
mm,
I mean,
mhm.
what saved the show in the first place after the first 6 episodes, it was the lowest rated NBC primetime show in history at like 2.1 rating, Nielsen rating, was the 40-Year-Old Virgin. That summer
Mm.
was a smash hit, $100 million hit. So
Yeah.
they went, oh, wait a minute, Steve Carell's a movie star. Well, we'll get another season of it. So they ordered, 13 of them. So they picked it up for the rest of the year. Then that year, 2006, we won the Emmy Award. Well,
Mm,
the rest of the business is saying this is the funniest show on TV.
right.
So now we're feeling our oats, and seasons 3, 4, and 5 and 6 are arguably some of the best TV ever done.
Oh, it's great. That
Yeah.
that whole part right there, I would say probably like the beginning of season 3. I think that's the one where Michael kisses Oscar in the season premiere,
Hmm.
and then all the way up until Jim and Pam's wedding. That span is just straight magic. I mean,
Yeah.
the way that
Yeah.
they did all that. And having I love Bob and Phyllis's wedding being a ripoff of Pam's original wedding. Like I think that's such a funny thing. Even having, the initials be the same and everything just kind of, they literally took everything and then uh what's his name's band, the 80s band playing. I mean, that was just
Scrantonicity.
yeah, yeah,
Scrantonicity. Yeah.
Scrantonicity playing. That was all just so classic. I just I that makes me laugh so much. And I
Well,
love
watching Brian rehearse his singing. He's not a singer,
right, right.
but
Yeah.
he had help. I mean, I think the bass player in the band was one of the bass. I think he was the bass player from a band called Weezer, a famous
Oh yeah.
band.
Oh yeah.
And so, I mean, the people around him, the guy who wrote the theme, for instance, I mean, they're great musicians, right? So they were all coaching him and helping him. But still, when you hit those drumsticks, if you're
Yeah.
not a singer, and I'm not a singer, and there were parts where I had to sing, and
Uh-huh.
I always felt like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
My confidence. There was some stuff where I felt like I could sing, Johnny Cash, for instance. But other times I was like, oh boy, this is not going to be good.
Yeah. Let me ask you. So after Michael Scott leaves the show, right, or
Right,
leaves the office, and then they brought in Robert California.
right.
How did James Spader fit in with the rest of the cast?
Well, I know nothing about that season at all. I didn't do an episode in season 8.
Mm,
I'm not a James Spader fan, so
mm.
I'm probably best not to comment on it.
Oh, okay. So you don't have to tell me why, but you have some personal experience with him, or you just as far as acting
Yeah,
goes?
well, that would be correct.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. I don't want you to get I don't want you to dish
No, no.
feed.
I mean, no. There was never any, thing between us. I mean, it was
Oh,
just my personal taste, shall we say?
okay. Oh,
I
okay.
mean,
Yeah.
I get it. On one hand, I when I see something I think is a little insincere,
Uh-huh.
I have a very high bar.
I see. I see. Well, you did Boston Legal. Did you have any experience with him on Boston Legal?
No, no, I didn't work
Oh,
with him on that. I worked with Julie Bowen, and who got fired from that show. Believe it or not, still can't
uh,
believe they fired her. Although she did land on her feet, I might
yeah,
add. Yeah,
right.
things worked out okay for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so did you have so how was it different? I mean, you had some experience after Steve Carell left. Um, in all of that situation, did you feel like there was kind of a void or a difference there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole tone is different. I mean, the
Mhm.
energy's different. Certainly. I mean, Steve. You know, I mean, he's the little engine that could. I mean, it's kind of like if you have Kobe Bryant on your team and then suddenly
Yeah.
you don't have Kobe Bryant.
Right. Right.
You miss Kobe.
Yeah.
You're looking around for him, like, hey, where is he?
Yeah.
We're missing him. I watched his whole career. I mean, that kid really. It was amazing how he worked himself into what he became.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy scored 62 points in his last game.
Right. Right. Man,
So
no, this
at 40 years old with a bum Achilles,
yeah,
okay.
well, right.
So
Let me tell you, I'm from Sacramento. I'm a Kings fan, and I know that
mhm.
all those Laker fans don't acknowledge. I know
I,
that
w-
the rivalry is only in Sacramento,
I think we're
but
playing you. I think we're playing you tonight.
yeah, and I got to tell you, anytime you know what bothers me the most, I got to tell you. Now you got me on a Lakers rant. Is that when they come to Sacramento, the half the arena is purple and gold. I mean, you'll hear "Let's Go Lakers" in the Sacramento in the Golden One Center here in Sacramento.
That even happens in the Boston Garden. Okay,
Yeah,
there's still Laker fans everywhere you go. I mean,
yeah,
that's just they're an international squad. I mean,
yeah,
what they've won so many championships.
yeah. Boston too.
I mean,
So
we did punk you out of 2 of them up there, I must
yeah,
say.
yes, you did.
We
Yes, you
certainly
did.
we certainly did. There was a game 7 up there. I believe Shaq was calling you the Queens, as
Oh
I
yeah.
recall.
You know what? Okay, so there was the game six. There was the game six that we have Tim Donaghy saying that it was thrown to the Lakers,
Well,
and
he
then
was
game
the
seven.
little fixer, wasn't he?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
the Lakers, and then of course the Kings just didn't play well in Game 7. I mean, they lost, right?
They missed a lot of shots. They missed a lot of shots.
Yeah. But it was the next year in the preseason when they were playing the preseason when Rick Fox and Doug Christie got in a fist fight.
I remember that. Hey, is this kid playing for the Lakers? This Christie kid, is that his son?
I don't know. I don't know if it is or not.
Oh, I mean, the Lakers have a kid coming off the bench. Max Christie is his name. Big, tall. I think he kind of looks like him.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
I mean, I followed Doug Christie. He played at Pepperdine, so I followed those guys. He was the local team. Yeah, it's funny. Go ahead.
He's a great defender. I mean,
Christie?
Watching Doug Christie. Oh man, he was.
I hated him though.
Yeah, I know. Well, we hated Rick Fox, so it's okay.
Oh yeah, well, Rick Fox. I mean, speaking of actors,
yeah,
I think Rick Fox could have used some Stanislavski training. Still could.
Yeah. Well, but
he's a pretty boy. Pretty boys don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he's married to what's her name, Vanessa Williams. Is that?
Yeah.
So he's doing okay, I guess.
Yeah, he's doing all right. He's doing all right.
So now, there's talk about an office reunion, and are you up for that? And have you been called about that?
Oh no, I haven't been called about it. Okay. Well, sure, you would have to be, right? I mean, but I don't see how it's possible. I mean, what do they mean reunion? I mean, Greg Daniels, the executive producer, the writer, creator, he was very clever at the end of the show. He sent everybody off away. He scattered them all to the wind. I mean, there's nobody left in Scranton at the end of it. I mean, Phyllis and I were in St. Louis, I think. I don't remember. I mean, but he made sure that it would be really difficult to do it. And Carell doesn't want to do it. So really, what's the point without him doing it? I mean, the problem with it is it's almost doomed to fail.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm concerned about, because
it's impossible. It's impossible to turn back the hands of time here. I mean, I was at a convention here recently for The Office in Chicago, right? And so they had a banner of me up there, and there's a photo of me from the show on the banner. And a kid walks up to me, looks at me sitting there. I got my beard, and he's looking at the photo. He's looking at me, and he goes, "Is that you?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yep, that's me 15 years ago, son. I bet you look different 15 years ago." I said, "How old are you?" He's 18. I said, "Well, 15 years ago, you looked a hell of a lot different."
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing is also, one of the things that I think probably, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that what made it so interesting is that other than Steve Carell, nobody was a big name. So everybody kind of, I bet, was a little hungry to get a show.
Well, but Rain was, but now they are. I mean, John's a movie star, for God's sake.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, now they are
big time movie star.
But I think what I mean is that as you grow as an actor, I'm sure, and as you grow as a human being, you're probably a little bit different. It might be hard to recapture that chemistry.
You're never going to get it back. I mean, that's the thing. It's lightning in a bottle. I mean, even as time went on, the camaraderie of season 2 is completely different than the spirit of the show in season 9. That's just how it goes. Because everybody's schedule changes and the demands become greater on everyone, and everyone else has somewhere else to be. At the beginning, they were just happy to be there.
Yeah.
So as time goes on, all these things change. You can see on the show, the hair becomes better, the clothes become better, the makeup becomes more star. Although Carell wore the same suit for 7 years. I think he was sick of that suit.
Yeah, I bet. Well, let me ask you. I appreciate your time, and I want to ask you a few questions I ask everybody who comes on the podcast. Okay.
Sure.
First one, what would you say is your biggest success in life?
Oh, I can't I mean, I guess my career. I guess you'd say that being
Mhm.
a shooting 74.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you the next question. Maybe,
I mean,
what do you,
success. I'm happy being me. That's successful. I think so.
mm,
You know.
being you?
Yeah, I'm happy with myself. So that's how you define success, or that's how I define it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What would you say is your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, my biggest failure. Damn.
Other than not taking that Back to the Future role, or
Oh. Well, probably not marrying Susan Day when I should have.
Mm,
That was a failure. Not
mm,
having kids, I mean, that was a failure.
mm,
But I didn't choose that life. I chose a different life. So
mhm.
everybody's got regrets when you look back. I mean, I would have been probably just as happy being a basketball coach,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
I am being an internationally known.
Yeah.
I forget that all the time. I'm like, well, wait, I'm famous. How do they know me? I'm always confused. Wait, how do they know me?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that's gotta be so crazy to just sit there and look back and go, "I was on, like, one of the most famous TV shows of all time."
Well, I mean, here's what's so crazy about it. I mean, Vance Refrigeration, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I have a closet right there just full of Vance Refrigeration shirts and sweaters and
Right.
hats and all that stuff behind you. I mean, it never stops. License plates and, kitty bibs and shower curtains and keychains and, all of it. So the marketing of it, you never expect that to happen. I'm not really sure how much I had to do with it.
Right.
I
Well, you
guess
did, but you did, right? I mean, you
I,
brought that
I,
character
gue-
to
I,
life.
I guess I did, but I don't think about it that way. I mean, I was lucky to be persistent, to be able to play a whole lot of different stuff, and I enjoyed most of it.
Mm,
Some of it, I mean, I had a lot of great experiences. I mean, I got to hang out with stars and meet famous people, and that was one of the advantages I had was that I was never overwhelmed by it. I had no knowledge of the business at all, so I was a complete novice. I was never intimidated by fame. In fact,
mm,
I was dead set against it, because it
mm.
interfered with Susan in my life. I mean, I hated when people would come up to us out when we were out eating, be like,
Mm.
why are they bothering us? Leave us alone, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they loved her, they wanted a piece of her. Now that's the biggest joy that being Bob Vance gave me is that I can make someone happy just
Mm.
by taking a photo with them or signing a piece of paper or sending them something in the mail. I can make somebody's day
Yeah.
big time.
That's
So
that's
that's
awesome.
that's the great joy that gave me. I mean, is
Yeah.
that ability, and I
Yeah.
never thought I'd have that. I mean, it's a weird thing, fame. I mean, you're in the pursuit of it, although in and of itself, it's a really curious concept.
Yeah. So, last question I have for you. One day down the road, you're gonna pass away, and, someone's gonna give your eulogy. What is
Mm.
the one thing you hope someone says about you in your eulogy?
He treated everyone with kindness,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah.
I would hope that they would say that. I mean, my goal when I started out was I wanted when I left the set, I wanted everybody to say, "Wow, what a pro."
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
never wanted anybody to go, "What a diva, what a prima
Yeah.
donna." I want everybody to go, "Whoa, does that guy bring it or what?" You know.
Yeah.
And so then as time went on, as Bob Vance got into people's psyche, then every time I went on a different set, people were watching to see what Bob Vance was going to do, so
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
just turned the light up a little bit brighter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was funny because I was going to these auditions. For instance, I went to the Coen brothers, right? I
Yeah.
was auditioning for the remake, the Rooster Cogburn remake, Jeff Bridges picture,
Mm.
John Wayne movie that they
Mhm.
remade. And the callback was on a Sunday afternoon, which is very rare in Hollywood, and it was at Paramount lot, and everybody in that waiting room was a movie star. And I was looking around at everybody. I was like, "What am I doing here?" And I go in the room, and Ethan and Joel are in there, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Bobby." I'm like their long lost friend. They know me. They're talking to
Mhm.
me like they know me, and they know my work. And I'm like, "How do they know me?"
And they knew you from as Bob Vance, huh?
Well, who knows what
Yeah.
they saw? I mean, there was so much stuff that anybody could see.
Yeah, man. Well, that's awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate the time you've given me. I appreciate your work, and thank you for bringing a character to life that, it's crazy. My kids, most of my kids weren't even alive when The Office was on, but they all watch it and know it, and they know who Bob Vance is. When I was telling
Well,
them, I'm like, I have him coming on, they were all excited.
well,
So,
great. I hope I didn't let them down. And so I would tell your actress or actor daughter's offspring, my best advice, other than go to school and learn what you're
mhm.
doing. Make your own movie.
Make your own movie.
Make your own movie.
Yeah.
The fastest, quickest, surest way is make your own movie.
Nice.
Raise
Hey,
the
it works for me.
raise the money, write the script, put the whole thing together, do it all. Do it all. It's your movie. Nobody else. You don't rely on anybody else. I did a movie like that. It's called Dick Dickster. If you get a chance,
Mhm.
watch that. It's my little
Yeah.
take on Hollywood, and
Uh-huh.
my funny take on Hollywood. I did a mockumentary, and I did everything on it. Everything,
Mm,
everything, and that would be my advice.
nice. Are you and doing everything on it? I mean, how proud of you are you on that?
Well, it got made.
Yeah. Yeah, it
you
did.
know, it got made, so it's out there in the world. I made it. Against impossible odds.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Schafer.
All right, Josh.
I would tell you you are a pro. So anybody who's listening, subscribe. We got more stuff coming up. And thank you, Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration. I appreciate it.
That's what she said.
Nice. We'll
All
see you
right.
later.
All right.
Bye bye.
Thanks, bud.